Today on TimesCast, New Hampshire votes in the Republican primary. First, a look at super PACs, outside groups that can raise unlimited amounts of money to sway the election. And New Hampshire voters speak out.
The sovereignty of states is important to me, and also our balance of power.
One of the new factors driving the race this year is the role of super PACs, the unregulated money coming in from outside groups that's driving this race.
Newt has more baggage than the airlines.
The Supreme Court ruling that allowed outside groups to advocate specifically for a candidate has changed the role of campaigns.
The proven conservative.
It has allowed candidates to get their message across and attack their rivals without getting their hands dirty themselves. We got a glimpse of how different this would be in Iowa, where Mitt Romney's super PAC unleashed a barrage of attacks against Newt Gingrich.
30 years in Washington, flip-flopping.
And he could not respond, he didn't have money. Newt Gingrich's super PAC now can fight back. Sheldon Adelson, a wealthy casino owner from Nevada, has given $5 million to help advance Mr. Gingrich's message, straight against Mitt Romney, to put advertisements on the air to push the issue of Bain Capital, which Mr. Gingrich says was an example of looting companies that Mr. Romney was directly involved in.
And began a pattern exploiting dozens of American businesses.
Mitt Romney's super PAC has responded in kind. They've already reserved $2.3 million of advertisements in South Carolina to push back against this message coming from Mr. Gingrich. While federal election law prohibits the candidates from coordinating strategy with them, these super PACs know what the campaigns are doing because they watch television, they read the newspaper, and they see the strategy and the lines of attack going forward. As the campaign moves beyond New Hampshire, the role of super PACs are likely to become even more pronounced in South Carolina and Florida, the other two states that will be voting in January. Those states are larger, where retail campaigning is much more difficult and television advertising is much more important.
And the Times traveled across New Hampshire to speak to voters about which candidate they support.
None of the candidates meet all of my requirements, which they never do, but in this case, each of the candidates has a failure of one kind or another that makes me just a little bit nervous.
I came today to hear Mitt because I'm pretty sure I'm voting for him.
He is a pretty run-of-the-mill politician, which is actually what what I'm actually seeing as his strength right now.
He embodies many of the things that I'm looking for change, looking for responsible, trustworthy government.
The considerations are Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich at this point.
At the moment, I'm leaning towards Huntsman, but I'm not yet quite convinced.
If I had to vote right this minute, I probably would lean towards Ron Paul because he's the most radical.
I think Dr. Paul is very good on domestic, but I have a little problem with his foreign policy.
I am a registered Republican, however, most of my issues, as far as particularly social issues, I lean towards the Democratic side.
I feel like maybe Obama hasn't had the time he needed to fix some of the things he should have fixed, but do we have enough time to give him another 4 years? And that's the question I want answered.